Hello and welcome to Executive Decision, where every week we go head to head with the big leaders of the Indian economy, business leaders, thought leaders, political leaders. Joining me today, very happy to have Uday Kotak, who is the CEO of Kotak Mahindra Bank and has also just been appointed as President of the Confederation of Indian Industry, CII. Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Kotak, for joining us, and congratulations on the appointment. You take over at a time, Mr. Kotak, when the headwinds, rough winds are blowing across the Indian economy. Just to start off by understanding whether we broadly agree on where we stand with the economy. Do you share the assessment now of a broad spectrum of analysts, whether it's rating agencies, the RBI, that the Indian economy is in bad shape?
Right. I think, Srinivasan, we have to use a comparison with the real world. Think about many boats out there in high seas. One of the boats happens to be a boat called India, along with the boats of various other countries. As we are all in high seas out there for achieving the goals of each country, we have a significant thunderstorm and a cyclone hitting all of us. And it is a health and a science crisis probably once in 100 years, and therefore completely unclear vision in terms of what happens to the health and science part at this stage. No immediate vision on the cure for the virus or when the vaccine comes. So we are now trying to grapple with finding solutions in the world of economics and finance to alleviate the pain for the economy coming out of what is essentially a pandemic situation in front of us.
Okay. So that said, you're right. This is a storm that nobody could have seen coming. But I think what is certainly up for debate is whether governments, individual governments, have done enough. And there are two broad criticisms of the Indian government's response. One is simply that compared to other countries which are also facing this storm, we have simply not spent enough. The 20 lakh crore package which was announced has now been widely dissected, again by a very broad spectrum of analysts, and almost everyone agrees that the actual cash out to the government is about 1 lakh crore, which is less than 1% of GDP, which is less than what most emerging or developed economies have spent.
Srinivasan, let me give an answer to that. There are three economic agents who face the pain out of the pandemic. First is directly the individuals and the businesses who are at the forefront and facing the attack from the virus, the consequent lockdown, impact on the economy, and the gradual getting out of the lockdown. The first agent is economic agent is individuals and businesses. The second is the government, and the third is the financial sector, which takes the residue. Now, as far as the government is concerned, the pain has to be measured as a percentage of the economy. India's total GDP is 200 lakh crores. So on 200 lakh crores, we have to look at what is the pain which has already happened to the government. Before the pandemic or before COVID hit us, the estimate for the center plus state fiscal deficit for 2021 was 6.5% of GDP. Against that, because of the revenue loss happening because of the COVID, plus the package, the total fiscal deficit now is estimated to be between 11 to 12%. Let us pick a number, 11.5%. So we have 5 percentage points more than what we had planned as of today. On a 200 lakh crore economy, 5% hit is 10 lakh crores. Therefore, the government's pain or loss because of the pandemic is a total of 10 lakh crores from what was originally planned. Some of it is because of the loss of revenue out of GST and other sources. Some of it is out of the package. Therefore, when we look at the two numbers, we should think about the delta which as of now is 10 lakh crores. Number two, there are some other parts which the government has done and which I think is a very smart way of planning, and I will tell you why. The government has given a guarantee for the MSME sector, which is 3 lakh crores. 3 lakh crores is about 1.5% of GDP. The beauty about a guarantee by the government is that it does not hurt this year's fiscal deficit. The guarantee is for a 4-year loan to be given by banks and NBFCs to the micro, small and medium.
That said,
and that guarantee is going to work. We think the full disbursement will happen.
If I may just jump in for a second. While you're right to say that the government was already feeling the pressure even before the lockdown, and they certainly will be hitting the fiscal deficit, the fact is that many other countries around the world have also been under duress and have also had to deal with the storm. But they have ended up spending a much higher percentage of GDP, 5, 6, 7, 8, even 10%, to try and bail out both individuals and businesses. Not just through an elaborate system of making loans cheaper or easier, but through direct cash transfers. That's not happened here.
No, I think
when you talk of small businesses, when you talk of MSMEs, if I may just finish, 3 lakh crores is the size of the supposed loan guarantee, of which the government's cash out itself is only going to be 45.
No, but the government
crores.
Liability is 3 lakh.
What small businesses are saying, sir,
government liability
what
is
small
3 lakh
businesses
crores.
are saying, government's liability may be 3 lakh crores, if it ever comes to that. But what small businesses are saying, and I'm sure you're in touch with them, is it's not necessarily that they're looking right now for easier loans. What they want is some kind of a cash transfer or a cash bailout, which will help them through this time. If they take loans, they're only adding to their interest pressure. And there's no guarantee that the economy is going to turn around for them to be able to service their interest.
Srinivasan,
so is really this elaborate loan mela kind of system what the economy needs?
Srinivasan, I think you have a point, and I would like to respond in the following manner. I do believe we need to do more for protecting lives and livelihood as we go forward. So that is the here and now measure, and I'm sure government would consider it as we go forward. Having said that, we are coming out of the lockdown and we are now in unlock 1.0. As we go down the unlocking part, what is going to happen or what is likely to happen, that immediately there will be a spurt in what one would define as pent up demand. People who are not able to spend, and you've seen that in many cases, including in the extreme, the liquor shops, and how pent-up demand came in suddenly. Same thing will happen in many other goods. So as we open up, there will be a huge amount of pent-up demand, and the supply side will probably take time to settle down as supply chains get their act together. What we have to be careful about, let me just on that.
Yes, go ahead, sir.
As we go forward, the time when government may want to think about demand side measures further is after the pent-up demand sort of tapers off, and as we begin to get out of that short-term spurt, that's the time when I think is the most appropriate time to be thinking about the demand side measures.
But Mr. Kotak, we were already facing a demand problem, as you know, even before this whole COVID storm hit us.
Right.
So And given now the fact that the economy is in even worse shape, you've had now widespread evidence, anecdotal or otherwise, of people either being laid off or having to take salary cuts, further depressing the possibility of consumer spending.
Yeah.
How is this demand surge going to happen without some kind of government support?
Srinivasan, in the short run, you will see a spurt in demand out of pent-up demand for goods and services. You are already seeing signs of that. I have been talking to people in the business and industry on FMCG goods. Most of the FMCG companies are saying they are now at 90 to 95% of capacity. And they are actually seeing their supply chain work and the consumption side begin to really happen. So we have to be careful that the thing when we push for demand side, which we will need to do, it is balanced with the supply side constraints also getting easier. And I am
Okay.
I am of the view that we should look at the here and now measures primarily towards lives and livelihood.
Okay. The other criticism of the government, which is also linked to what you're saying about unlockdown, is that we seem to be in a very peculiar position as a country, that we are unlocking as the virus is actually surging. We are now climbing the virus charts, where I think 4th or 5th highest in the world, and rising even as we are opening the lockdown, which some point is evidence to the fact that we have mismanaged the entire planning of this.
Srinivasan, I will ask the reverse question. Okay. We are today at about 6,000 odd deaths in the country, or mortality. Okay. For the moment, let us assume that we rewind back to March 24th and we did not have the lockdown.
Sure.
Are we saying that the deaths would be less than 6,000? And this is an important question, because this is not a pandemic which anybody has prior experience on the model. This is a pandemic where we are taking decisions based on the present data, advice from experts in the science field, and we are moving on. Let us take the extreme position of another country called Sweden. They took a view on herd mentality and went ahead by saying no lockdown. The fact of the matter
herd immunity.
The fact of the matter is the deaths in Sweden are much higher than most other parts of Europe, particularly Scandinavia, where Norway and Denmark went ahead with a lockdown. Therefore, to make a case that no lockdown would be better is shooting in the dark. And the fact of the matter is, as we sit today, the number of deaths in a country of 1.3 billion people is 6,000. And we do not know.
Absolutely. When it comes,
if we had no lockdown.
No, I agree with you. Mr. Kotak, I agree with you that when it comes to deaths per million, we're amongst the lowest in the world. And I don't think it's anyone's case that we didn't need to lock down. The question many are asking is, how was the lockdown handled? You have a situation now where you held back your vast migrant population from being able to travel home at the time of the lockdown. They then, through various means, we've seen the trauma play out on our screens, managed to make their way back, millions of them. Now you're opening up the economy while a good substantial chunk of your workforce is not around.
So let's get...
Which is, I'm sure all businesses, including yours, would be facing.
So let's move to the next point. You're moving to a separate point in terms of migrant. Okay? On the migrant issue, I am of the view that this is a simmering problem for many, many years. India has effectively brushed under the carpet. And what is the reason I say that? All our lives, Srinivasan, we have lived with the fact that migration is from rural to urban. The very poor incomes in rural India over the years and over decades.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
And that is why the migrant aspirationally moved to cities. And in the hope of creating a life and a livelihood to be able to support himself and his family back home. And of course, the incomes which the migrants made in the cities were higher than what they made back in their village. Now, let us look at this migrant and what is the proposition we have dealt with for the migrant over all these years. Number one, he came to the city and stayed in, most of them stayed in a slum or a chawl.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Many of those slums and chawls over years had a ratio of 1,000 to 1 for toilets. We accepted it.
No, Mr. Kotak.
One minute. Let me complete.
No. I'm not on the wider question of the sort of problem of a migrant workforce. I'm simply on the fact that
I'm coming to why the
when
migrant
you announce the lockdown,
I'm coming to
without I'm just saying, if you announce a lockdown without adequate steps to compensate people like migrants and daily wage laborers, to either keep them in their place or to enable their return home, you have this bizarre disconnect.
No, but I think
where a large chunk of your workforce has now fled to their villages as you want to now open up. So I was talking more about the government's response and whether you felt that the government had mismanaged the migrant problem.
Srinivasan, I'm going beyond blaming somebody or not blaming somebody. I'm going into the core issue which we as a country need to address beyond which government. And let me focus on that.
Okay, what?
And
What?
in that context,
Okay.
and it's not about governments, it's about what the country needs more than anything else. Now, this migrant came to Mumbai or Delhi or any other city and was working in companies and employers with no job security. And this is a fact for last 20, 30, 40 years. And we accepted that as a reality. We did not believe that job security was important. So here is a migrant in horrible living conditions and no job security. And on top of it, the virus by its very nature, because of the density of cities, the density of chawls, density of the slums, is more exposed to getting the virus. And therefore, the migrant has taken the obvious, correct, rational decision that I am better off going out of the city, back to my village. I will make less money.
But the point, I think the point is that the migrant may have taken that decision, but that decision was taken under duress. There was literally no choice given, nor was that journey enabled. That journey was actually blocked till at some point it had to be opened up. But moving away from the migrant question, Mr. Kotak, I think listening to your answers, there is a question which is coming up increasingly, which is whether captains of industry like yourself or chambers like CII are being able to question the government's decisions and its actions enough. There's a perception that somehow there's a reluctance to question the government, not criticize it for political reasons or just simply to make points, but to hold it to account for its actions, which may have exacerbated an already ongoing problem. Is that a fair?
Srinivasan, you need to look at the CII's 10-point agenda, which we have put out in the public domain and which has been widely circulated to media. And if you look at the 10-point agenda, it is about the medium-term strategy for India, independent of anything else. The need for prioritizing healthcare. India spends 1.3% of GDP on healthcare. We are saying make the choice now. We need to dramatically increase medium-term spend on healthcare. We are saying prioritize education, prioritize mother nature, prioritize rural and urban rebalance. If migrants have gone back, what are we doing to change the fundamental ethos of migration from rural to urban to getting to a more balanced regional growth? I remember from my school days, this is a long time ago, in my chapter on economics, there was always that India's agenda for growth is a balanced regional growth. That was the talk. The walk has been rural to urban migration. For the first time, the migrant of India has voted and said, I'm going back to my village. We now need to create opportunity for that migrant in the village and create a framework where we have significant investment in rural India to transform the rural-urban balance.
Okay, fair enough. So you're saying that you have raised these points and you're in a sense addressing the government as well. But a member of your fraternity, Rajiv Bajaj, you must have seen, has been very outspoken. He says that we have ended up flattening the wrong curve. We've ended up flattening the GDP curve instead of the virus curve.
See, Srinivasan, on that, I think I've given my views in a way, and I'm saying it's not about a person or governments. My view is the deaths as of today are 6,000 or odd.
Okay, you're saying that itself is
now I'm
evidence
not sure
of the fact that
I'm not sure that if we did not go for the lockdown, that the deaths would be less than that.
We would be.
And if we were sitting here today with the death ratio or death number, which is 60,000 or 600,000, what would the criticism independent journalists like you have made? Oh, why did the government not lock down?
Okay. Let me ask you in conclusion, I didn't have a chance to ask you enough about your own sector, which is banking, and about Kotak itself, that are you concerned about the fact that this could, or this particular crisis could also increase the stress on banks? And I'm specifically asking you at the starting point about Kotak Mahindra. Are you already sensing any signs of increasing stress?
No. Okay, I believe that out of the total 100 lakh crore loan book of banks, there will be impact coming out of COVID. It's an event which is once in a century event. And there are segments of Indian economy which are bearing the brunt of it. So MSME has got some protection, but there are many components of the economy which will bear the brunt. And in that context, there could be some amount of losses. We can debate what that number is. But if I had to pick a number, I believe it could be in the range of around 4 to 5% of the loans. And that could happen for this year, and some of it spilled over into the next year. So if that is the size of the impact, the banking sector and the financial sector will need more capital. And my advice to all players in banking and finance is the balance sheet is important. Please beef up on capital. That is the biggest shock absorber for risk.
That's the biggest shock absorber on risk. But with your own bank, are you sensing any stress?
No, I'm saying that it's not about bank A or bank B. As a policy, as you know, Srinivasan,
you're talking overall.
That we always talk about the broader picture and avoid talking about the individual case.
Okay. No, that's fair enough. But last question I want to ask you. Many people are seeing this crisis, they're sensing an opportunity in this crisis, including the government, which is saying that this could be a chance for India to try to become a kind of alternative to China, that there would be possibly a migration away from China to countries like India. Others are questioning that. Are you seeing any evidence at all of that, of any kind of migration away from China to India?
Okay, I think first of all, especially since I had the opportunity of taking this official position, we've had the Prime Minister of India address the annual session of CII for the celebration of 125 years of CII. And the message from the Prime Minister was very clear. We are fully committed to supporting business and industry as business and industry works towards redevelopment and focus on creation of a strong and self-reliant India. The way I take that message is an Atmanirbhar Bharat is consistent with a competitive India and an India engaged with the world. And I do believe that some manufacturing, because of the China global position vis-a-vis the US and other countries, will move to India. I have confidence in that. But China is the world's factory. India will get some share of it. I see also an opportunity of India being the office of the world, both the front office and the back office.
Okay, front office and back office. We'll have to wait and see how that plays out. But Mr. Kotak, thank you very much indeed for joining us and taking our questions.
Thank you, Srinivasan. Goodbye.
Goodbye. Thanks.